Hey, it's Alex Williams with the New Stack. Welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about application development, deployment, and management at scale. Dell Technologies is a unique family of businesses that helps organizations and individuals build their digital future and transform how they work, live, and play. The company provides customers with the industry's broadest and most innovative technology and services portfolio, spanning from edge to core to cloud. Learn more at Dell.com. Hey, Alex Williams here of the New Stack at KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con in San Diego. It is the second full day of the conference, getting toward the end of the day, and here now with two guests, and we're going to be discussing the container storage interface, and particularly the drivers with the container storage interface, and DevOps, and how the two intersect. And so Parasar Kodati is a portfolio marketing consultant with Dell EMC.
That's right, yes.
Thank you for joining us. And
happy to be here.
And Audrius Stripeikis.
That's right. So I'm product manager with Dell EMC, responsible for container storage interface drivers.
Awesome. So, this is an interesting topic for me. I think because in just, back in 2006, 2007, actually 2008, and I'm losing track of the years because it's that long ago. But I remember covering the storage space. And it was a funny time because there was new technologies that we're seeing emerge, especially REST-based APIs. There was more discussions about at-scale applications, but storage was not really discussed. It really wasn't discussed, and it was many, many years before it was really discussed. Until most recently, I think it's really started to have a new kind of energy about it in many ways. I think there's always been incredible innovation in the storage space that we've seen in terms of, block storage capabilities, for example. But now what we are seeing is almost a new acceptance, as we're seeing a lot with container technologies overall, right? There's this new acceptance of what we think of, what we can accept as new. There's, as we well know, container technologies have become a symbol in many ways, right? And so I think they're also a symbol of storage. But out of this has come like this need now to kind of connect, make sure the connections are there. So the APIs can connect to basically, physical storage environments.
Yeah, infrastructure as code.
Right. And so maybe what you could first do, Audrius, is help us understand what is a container storage interface? And then I'd like to get into what the drivers are that you're working on.
Container storage interface is essentially a specification that it defines how storage arrays can be connected to Kubernetes clusters. Because initially, when all it started, everybody came up with their own definition on how storage arrays will connect to Kubernetes. And that made life very difficult for us vendors to develop those drivers that connect to various container orchestrators. Until recently, back probably last year, industry community decided to converge and define this container storage interface that will connect storage arrays to all Kubernetes, to all container orchestrators. And this sparked, as you said, innovation. This give the boost for the storage to give access to developers to provision volumes directly rather than waiting for those developers, somebody else to provision the volumes. So this was really cloud experience expressed through container storage interface.
So self-serve, that ability to really serve yourself.
Exactly.
And that self-serve then, I expect, is reflected in CSI drivers.
Right, so CSI was developed with two personas in mind. One is consumer, a developer. Another is provider or storage admin, Kubernetes admin. The guy who is really allocating capacity, and giving to developer to consume. Then developer can consume that storage in a matter of seconds. And he doesn't have to wait for the storage admin to provision that storage anymore. Self-service, two personas in mind, it's really a game changer for developers.
So maybe you can provide us some background on the CSI driver. What is the history behind it?
The history behind it is that, as I mentioned earlier, Kubernetes, when it started, it used to have a spec called flex volume. So flex volumes were in tree drivers developed by vendors, by the community, and they had lots of issues with it. Right? So drivers had to be updated only at the time when Kubernetes got released. Also, adding the new drivers to Kubernetes and other container orchestrators was cumbersome and complicated. So community decided that they need to develop a spec that will allow vendors like Dell EMC to deliver new drivers apart from the Kubernetes. So disjoin those two efforts, disjoin those two activities. And that's how the CSI spec came up.
But the drivers themselves then became part of the spec?
The drivers is realization of the spec. So driver essentially is a software that conforms to the specification and connects storage array to the Kubernetes.
Tell us about the architecture of that driver. What is differentiated about that driver that is different than more traditional storage software and storage drivers that you've worked with in the past?
So the big difference is the driver is specifically designed for the Kubernetes. Right? It's for container orchestrators. That's one thing. The second big difference is those two personas I mentioned earlier, consumer and the provider. And those are the two biggest differences. Self-service, essentially, that's value adds that drivers deliver.
What's the difference between the consumer is the driver the same both for the consumer and the provider?
So there are two different roles. The service provider or storage admin is the one who is allocating the capacity, allocating the storage for consumer to be used. And consumer is the one who will be using that allocation in the form of persistent volumes.
Okay. And so then the developer, what are you finding with the developers? What are the patterns you're starting to see with the developers and how they're using these drivers?
From developers' perspective, they care about the application. The only thing they care about is give me a certain capacity, which has to meet certain performance, and that's all I need to know. And that's exactly what CSI delivers to them. Developer specifies the size of the volume, specifies where that volume is going to be placed by selecting the storage class, and boom, the driver will do all the work automatically. So we'll start the workflow in the back end, which will provision LUN. Say for PowerMax, we'll provision LUN, we'll create storage group, we'll create masking views. Everything will be done automatically for the driver. No manual labor. Developer doesn't have to do anything. Storage admin doesn't have to do anything. It's all automated. So that's the beauty.
So the storage admin, how are they using it then? How are you seeing them use it?
That question comes up quite frequently. Storage admins are not used to this new paradigm. They feel like they're losing control, which is not necessarily the case, because CSI gives them control in the form of storage class. There's a concept or object called storage class, which is defining which storage array will be used, how much capacity will be allocated within that storage array, and who will have access to the storage class.
With specific quotas.
It's specific quotas. So storage admin can set quotas, can set limits, and give the storage class to developers to use.
This is where it seems to get to the heart of DevOps, doesn't it?
Yes. In fact, we have a demo running at our booth where we show a CI/CD pipeline tool called GitLab, which many of your audience should be aware of. What we are showing there is a developer can do their basic CI/CD workflows of doing newer versions of their application or their microservices, and whatever storage class is being defined is being automatically dynamically provisioned for their application. And we are showing where you specify certain quota, you can only have so many branches at a time, consuming only so many persistent volumes or the capacity. And if it exceeds these automation tools, one of the good thing is it doesn't allow the build to work, or even if the build completes, it won't allow the deployment because you have broken one of the quota rules. So yes, it is. This is where the broader DevOps would come in. Is how do you kind of educate IT organization, which is traditionally has been responsible to keep the lights on, to help developers move at the speed they want to, by kind of getting into the mindset of automation and provisioning infrastructure as code. And as Audrius mentioned, the moment you give everything to developers, they'll code it into their applications, and obviously there has to be some governance around these things. And this is where IT organizations are trying to see what are the tools available for them in terms of policy-based provisioning, configuration management, and so on. And this is where we are actually helping organizations who are on this journey to modernization and doing more, delivering digital services through software applications and so on. In fact, we have services where we go in and kind of lay out the land a little bit, what's happening in the, what are some of the pioneers doing in this area, and help them get into an automation mindset, both in terms of processes and what should be the handing off processes of application delivery and so on. And we have those consulting services in addition to the wider DevOps integration from a product perspective. Like CSI is a good example, but CSI is not the only thing happening in DevOps. Even before Kubernetes and microservices, people wanted to do continuous integration, continuous deployment, and the infrastructure needs to be baked into those processes neatly. Otherwise, no development team wants to raise a ticket to create some or provision some storage and some VMs and wait for 2 weeks, right? So, and that is changing. So a cloud-like consumption model is being demanded by developers in every organization.
But if it's being demanded by developers, but storage admins, are they demanding it?
They need to address the demand. Like
They
IT
need to, but But they don't necessarily want to, do they?
And part of that's where we come in as the infrastructure players, trying to educate the organizations, and sometimes they themselves are asking, hey, we want to transform the way we are running our operations and be more developer centric, or cut down the time to market, or improve the software quality, because today we are talking about software releases every day. We are not waiting for weeks or months for a software version to be out. So in this highly digitized, fast-moving development cycles, IT organizations are like being asked, okay, either we go to a completely serviced cloud, or we have invested in infrastructure and it's a very cost-effective model. How can we take advantage of all these investments? And the answer is, well, create that cloud-like experience on your data center. So it starts with the processes and kind of the right mindset around automation, but without losing control on the operations, because at the end of the day, IT will be held responsible for if something breaks or if an SLA is not met. So this is where there is a journey going on for IT organizations to modernize their operations and not just the infrastructure.
How are they working together? How are you finding the effective manners for developers and storage admins to work together?
I think to start with, whenever there is, depending on it's really a project-based
teams
as well, project-based teams as well. Depending on the scope of the project, I think first some education needs to be done as to how a modern workflow, a CI/CD workflow, a continuous deployment workflow looks like, and how infrastructure needs to seamlessly fit in. If you look at any one of those DevOps cycle, like okay, you commit your code, build it, test it. When it comes to deployment, infrastructure needs to come in seamlessly. So once storage admins, and this is where the storage admin's responsibility is now being split. Yeah, you need to maintain your traditional databases, your legacy workloads, but also need to put on this DevOps hat, and you're not so much storage admin, but you're a DevOps admin or a site reliability person. And this actually creates opportunity for storage admins to broaden their skills and be more effective, and be a part of that transformation instead of saying, no, I'm stuck to only my SAN storage and provisioning, and that's all I'm going to do. So this is where I think a lot of people are finding opportunity to broaden their roles. So it's the right education. And another good thing that is happening is, back in the day, automation meant a lot of scripting, meaning a lot of programming skills. These days, if you look at a modern automation platform like be it Ansible, or VMware has some great tools, or ServiceNow for IT delivery, they're all blog-based, open canvas where you can do your blog diagram of what you want to automate with the building blocks provided by tools or infrastructure vendors, and they can automate and manage their automation much more easily than worrying about, okay, what is this piece of code doing here? So that would be a high bar for IT operations people to educate themselves. So that's the good thing happening. Automation is actually getting easier to do. And that's what we are actually evangelizing and letting our customers know about these tools and how they can do it easily than investing a lot in programming skills and so on.
When do you find that developers are introducing the self-service capabilities in the team workflows that are evolving? Are the CSI drivers becoming part of any particular aspect of the workflow? Is there any patterns that you're starting to see in how CSI drivers are being used in workflows with developers and storage admins?
Essentially,
because when it comes to such a specific thing like a CSI plugin, I don't think the discussion between the storage admin and the developer should be around the CSI piece, which is really about consuming storage. It's about, okay, let's carve out, okay, your DevOps project, your development project needs these kinds of resources. Let's carve out that piece, right? And it's just operationally how it is consumed. Yeah, there is a CSI plugin. It would dynamically provision and so on. But as long as people are aware of how this process is running, and with that awareness, they can draw their kind of boundaries around, okay, this is the development project consuming these much resources on these platforms, and there is heavy automation going on here. And maybe whichever storage admin or infrastructure person is assigned to that is aware of the mechanics of how the thing is working.
Yeah.
The discussion may not be around just one plugin, but at a broader level.
Developer may not be aware. As a matter of fact, most of the time, developer is not aware of the underlying infrastructure, whether it's CSI driver being used or some other driver. So the developer, the only thing he cares about is, this is the capacity I need, that type of storage I need, this is it. And everything else is taken care of automatically. But there's quite a bit of work to be done for the storage admin or for Kubernetes admin to configure all of this. And this is where we're seeing challenges, because traditional storage admins really not very tuned into containers yet. They've been working on storage for quite some time, and they're not really aware of the tools and mechanics of how to connect storage to the Kubernetes. And this is where we have blogs, we have educational material that helps storage admins to take into account design considerations to connect storage to the Kubernetes.
What are some of the design considerations that you're recommending? What are some of the other considerations that you're recommending as well? Some of the top ones.
I would say number one is consider whether it's physical infrastructure or virtual infrastructure. So that will help to determine which driver to use. VMware has a driver called CNS. We have CSI driver. That's number one. Once that is done, next thing is the type of workloads. Then, depending on the workloads, storage admin or Kubernetes admin will choose whether it's a file system storage has to be used, block storage has to be used, the type of access that needs to be given to the applications, to the workloads. and type of performance. That's number 2. And number 3 would be what type of container orchestrator is being used. Is it commercial, like OpenShift, PKS, Docker, or vanilla version of Kubernetes?
How is this changing consumption of storage overall? Historically, storage administrators would have to guess in many ways how much storage capacity that they needed. And now we have a lot more data available.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's lots of ways that you can start to measure this data. And is that part of the workflow that you help them understand and develop to help better understand the data and the metrics behind their consumption?
Yes. So that's an area in terms of kind of call it health monitoring of your infrastructure, or if it's more granular, okay, what kind of, if they are using a file storage, what kind of different metrics of utilization and where the data is located, and any tools for migration and so on. So we have a lot of tools around data management, and they come for different use cases. They start from health monitoring to alerting about utilization, or having specific chargeback models, like multiple stakeholders are utilizing infrastructure and we need to build them as per their usage. So we have those tools for chargeback and so on. And there are tools around application level metrics as to what are the performance SLAs that certain applications require and how we are delivering those SLAs. And as we talk about them, these tools get more and more ingrained into the data path and the control path of the storage and host storage stack.
It changes a lot, doesn't it? In terms of changes how you think about the way developers interface with storage.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can't just give them open, access, right?
Exactly. And this is where this storage class comes in. So CSI was deliberately designed with those two personas in mind.
Right.
The consumer and the provider. Provider is the one managing the capacity, giving a certain amount of capacity for developers to consume. And the developers will consume this capacity when they need it and what type of the capacity they need.
How do you take into consideration issues such as, data protection, and the assurance that, that the data is not, let me put it another way, data protection, and then there's backup issues and such.
It's a big issue. For Kubernetes, so far, this is an uncharted waters issue, meaning, the community doesn't have specification.
There's Project Valero. I know you guys.
Project Valero, yes, that's being in the works and it's being commercialized. But from the CSI perspective, there's a snapshot that gives developers capability to create essentially backups of their data through the snapshot. Snapshot has been in the works for over a year, still in alpha stage, and community is planning to close this gap by hopefully end of this month. Kubernetes version 1.17 will promote snapshot to beta stage. That will be the time when data protection really will become ready to be used in production.
We have a few minutes left. What is the evolution do you see in the CSI driver? Is it done? Are there management issues that need to be developed? What's next?
Lots of things to be done. So CSI, although it was locked as GA last year, a year ago, there's lots of things to be done to make it production ready. As you mentioned earlier, data protection is probably one of the critical areas. Replication is another area. Multi-site is a third area that needs to be worked on. Lots of work is happening, great ideas are there, but the community needs more resources, more engineering resources. Companies need to contribute more to the CSI specification, more people developing Kubernetes solutions to be used in production environments.
So why don't you give a plug here for how people can contribute?
People can join the Kubernetes SIGs groups or working groups and start writing the code. That's the biggest way, or that's the best way to contribute.
How do you see DevOps evolving now? DevOps seems to always be evolving, and we've looked at it from a very, very kind of iterative point of view, and how those loops really help then define the next opportunities for efficiency and such. What are the signs that you're watching to get an idea about the future of DevOps in terms of CSI drivers and just the practice in terms of the relationships with teams as it relates to storage administration and developers?
So I think, it's a very broad area, and people who are at the forefront of doing production level Kubernetes are constantly, actually, as you said, evolving. How do we take our DevOps tools, and of course even DevOps tools folks are trying to come up with tools to do it for Kubernetes clusters and so on in their mix. What our focus is there is already so much automations and efficiencies that have been gained in terms of time to market and better software quality. We want to take this to the rest of the world, and not just the top few companies who are doing it very well. We want all of our customers to take advantage of these tools. So that's where our focus is. And we are constantly watching this space. It's rapidly evolving, as you said, and Kubernetes is challenging many of the players to rethink their strategies and so on as well.
Well, thank you both for your time.
Thank you, Alex.
It's been enlightening to hear about the developments of CSI, the developments of the interface, the DevOps practices that are evolving, the relationships with storage administrators and developers, and the challenges in terms of data protection and backup. And there's a lot more to come, so look forward to keeping in touch.
Awesome.
Dell Technologies is a unique family of businesses that helps organizations and individuals build their digital future and transform how they work, live, and play. The company provides customers with the industry's broadest and most innovative technology and services portfolio, spanning from edge to core to cloud. Learn more at Dell.com. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.